So our story begins just after Optimus releases all the energy within the Matrix, thus causing him to lose his memory. I would say just about everything goes the same. Megatron takes full advantage of the situation and, well, convinces Optimus or Orion Pax to basically join him at this point. And he does leave along with him as RC, Bumblebee, and Bulkhead all come in. However, as the Autobots get back to base, we then pan over to the Mariana Trench, or maybe some part of the ocean, right? Where Unicron's destruction causes a rift to open. And the precursors see this. Another dimension. Ours for the taking. No Jaegers, no defenders, it seems. Something has given us a chance, and we're going to take it. So, this is where they start looking at their army, their kaiju, and they decide that, maybe they could abandon the Jaeger dimension. And so, this is where they actually send Leatherback. Now, Leatherback is probably the best one I could use at the moment because, again, I do want this to take place during, like, early on Pacific Rim of the first movie. So he actually begins to head towards Jasper, Nevada's, or just Nevada's beach in general. And I'm not sure what the beach is called, but apparently this is what it looks like according to the internet. Meanwhile, back at the Autobot base, this doesn't go unnoticed as they actually discover, or Ratchet discovers, an energy signature coming from the Nevada Ocean, or at least that in around that area. And so Agent Fowler does admit he did actually pick up this signal and actually cleared everyone out of a warning of a tidal wave. So this is where we actually get to see Leatherback approaching the shore, and well, he looks around like very cautiously, wonder if there's any Jaegers. And Ratchet is looking at the monitor like, holy crap, what the heck is this? We've never dealt with anything like this before, but obviously we have to take it out, and asks if everyone is ready. And Bumblebee actually states, in his own little beeping tone here, that he is ready for, some fighting. And so Ratchet says, okay, he'll be analyzing the creature from here, and he will be running out to help them should this situation arise. So this is where Bumblebee, RC, and Bulkhead all pretty much run out to basically confront the creature, right? However, yeah, they're immediately in shock by how big it is. You have an entire kaiju in front of you, and they're like, oh my gosh, what the heck is this? Like, yo. And so Leatherback actually is now able and charges at them full speed. The Autobots have to, well, obviously no choice but to dodge, but they actually use their vehicle forms to get out of the way because of how big Leatherback is. And so this is where they actually think that, yeah, this thing can't be allowed to make it to the city by any means at all. And so this is where Leatherback actually begins to struggle a bit. They're jumping around him, shooting him, and even RC's able to run up his arm for a little bit. And so the Autobots definitely have at least a attack pattern, or at least an attack coordination going for them. And this is where I would definitely have a Leatherback get angry enough to actually try and deploy his EMP. But when he does it, it actually just gets knocked back. And so this actually angers Leatherback because, again, the Cybertronians weren't supposed to withstand that. So RC takes advantage of this where it's roaring at them and actually gets a well-placed shot in Leatherback's eye. And now he's pissed. He's angry. And now they have to deal with that. Yeah, probably was the best move, but also not the best move at the same time. But now Bulkhead then admits to Ratchet, dude, we have nothing on this thing. There's nothing we can, really do at this point. We need help ASAP. And he's saying this while firing on the creature. However, Ratchet runs out and states, all right, he's analyzed the creature and has high concentrations of radiation. Some type of organic radiation. It's very strong and it's very volatile. And so Ratchet actually comes out with the immobilizer and blasts the creature with it. And he says, by my calculations, this should have an effect on him, considering the fact that it's made of organic matter, but its blood is highly radioactive. So, boom. Leatherback begins to explode from the inside out. The disruption that the immobilizer caused to its internal organs causes it to, well, explode and plap out. And so RC is like, dude, that was pretty gross. But good job, Doc. Oh, great. Now we have to deal with this, huh? And so this is where we would pan right over to the Decepticon warship. And believe it or not, I definitely think that Megatron would still be doing his whole manipulation thing of Orion Pax, except I would have him be a bit more convincing in that they're here on this planet to protect the humans from the warlord Ratchets and his Autobot accomplices, endeavors and stuff like that. However, Soundwave walks in and, well, he shows them everything. Shows them the entire situation with the Pacific Rim, the monster, and even stating the energy signatures seem to have come from these coordinates. And so Orion's like, we're going to help them, right, Megatron? We're going to help these humans withstand them. To which Megatron is like, yes, of course, Orion. However, in order to help them, you have to do something for me in order for us to actually succeed. And so Soundwave takes Orion to his chambers where he begins to decode the Iacon coordinates. This is also where we pan over to Australia. However, not the, standard Australia, if you will. This is more or less in the outskirts of the desert where another kaiju has simply appeared. A bit smaller than the others, but still a valuable source nevertheless. And we actually see it's being attacked by mech. Luckily, this is an area where no people are, so no one can really see them. And so mech actually begins to deal some kind of damage to the kaiju, but it's not enough. As a matter of fact, they just exhausted their resources against this kaiju eel, if you will. And so Silas is about to give up until a missile hits squarely into the head of the kaiju, killing it as it pretty much goes through and blows up its brain. And Silas is looking like, what? What the heck? Who did that? And so this is where a jet flies over and transforms and lands in front of them. And he says, that would be me, dear human. I am Starscream, the Cybertronian that you so deeply crave to create. And so this is where Silas asks him, what does he want? And Starscream says, oh, nothing much. Maybe an alliance. After all, I did just save you. So I believe that could make you indebted to me, if you will. And so Silas takes a moment and thinks to himself. And then he's like, okay, let's do this. I have a few ideas for how we can make this our new army. And plus, I could use details for your Cybertronian biology. To which Starscream says, good, good. Now let's get to work. This is then where we pan over. I know, again, we're hopping around all the places, but I want to set everything up to another dimension. Dimension X. Kind of like Planet X from Transformers Cybertron, but a little bit different. And we actually see this team's Team Prime. Perceptor, Hashtag, Chromia, and Lycanoid? Huh. Interesting little team here, isn't it? Well, believe it or not, this would be the Team Prime of this dimension, with Lycanoid actually being my selection for a mutant because, again, I couldn't find any decent pictures of Savage Noble. So essentially, he's the bulkhead of the team. Hashtag is the Bumblebee of the team, except she's more tech savvy than him. Perceptor, obviously the scientist, and Chromia will be the RC, but she would also be the second in command of the Prime that's unfortunately dead. And so Perceptor asks them, because they just ran right back in, do you guys have it? Because this is our last chance to use it. To which Hashtag holds up a canister of a sort of vile black liquid. And she says, yeah, this is the last of it we've been able to extract from that facility. And this may be our last chance. To which Perceptor says, indeed it is. So everyone get ready. We'll be getting out of here pretty soon. However, this is where they actually hear footsteps approaching them. That being Akuja, Shrikethorn, and Raijin, all trying to descend upon the base, and they're actually beginning to tear through its defenses. This is where Lycanoid states he'll hold them off while they escape. And this is where Perceptor simply states, old friend, you've bailed us out more times than I could count. However, this is one of those times where I cannot allow that whatsoever. You see, there are a couple things that are needed in order to stop this invasion. And so Lycanoid kind of turns to him and says, Doc, we don't really have time for this. And so he gets shot right in the chest, and it's more or less like an electric taser that causes him to drop. And this is where Perceptor says, I know. To which hashtag runs over to Lycanoid and asks him, oh my god, is he dead? Oh no, he's breathing. Oh thank god. But she asks him, what the heck was that for? And this is where Chromia states, you're sacrificing yourself, aren't you? Just so that we could get a chance to escape, huh? And this is where Perceptor actually begins tethering the machine and pretty much states, yes, yes I am. Please place Lycanoid on the machine. He has done so much, and he's a vital part of the war. I cannot allow him to risk himself so recklessly. And this is where hashtag simply states, wait, what about you? To which he says, the transportation only has room for 3. So you guys are going to be the ones to escape. And this is where he states it's his choice. He's seen enough. And after the loss of Optimus Prime, he's kind of just want this to end and wants to make sure his friends are ultimately safe. And this is where hashtag begs Chromia to tell him to get in, that he can't do this. And this is where Chromia simply states, he's made his choice, kid. We can't really stop him. And so as they teleport away, the last thing they see is Raiden's fist coming down on the base and Perceptor's body being crushed by it. And before he really does die, he simply states, till all are one. Be safe, my friends. And so they would actually teleport off as they watch Perceptor get crushed and ultimately annihilated right then and there. This is where we pan over back to the Autobot base. And guess who's fixing up everybody? Ratchet. However, due to the fact that they do have some of the kaiju enzymes, Ratchet actually states that this is actually pretty interesting. The radiation from this kaiju gives off the same signal or the same properties as Energon, which is vastly interesting. However, this is where their space bridge opens automatically, and they're looking like, huh? Wait, what? Who? What's happening? And out steps the Chromia and hashtag, who's carrying an unconscious Lycanoid. And so the Autobots automatically get on guard and stand ready. And this is where Chromia simply states, easy now, stand down, we're not the enemy. We're from another dimension, or at least another world across dimensions, if you will. And she simply begins to talk to them, and well, the Autobots ultimately do stand down when they see the Autobot insignia. But this is where Miko walks over to Lycanoid, and she's like, oh my gosh, what is he? And so Lycanoid begins to stir, and he's like, oh, what the heck? Hey, Doc? Yo, where's Doc here? And this is where Chromio ultimately tells him what happened and why Perceptor did it. And Lycanoid lets out a primal roar of rage as he lost his friend. And this is where RC simply begins to explain to them, or at least asks us questions about who they are and, well, what were they like in all honesty. And so this is where Chromia begins to explain how her dimension was. They fought the Decepticons, and won too by using the spark extractor pretty early on. However, it wasn't over. And she even wonders, where's their Prime? To which Bulkhead simply states, well, he's been captured or taken by the Decepticons. And this is where Chromia states, okay, who's in charge? And Ratchet says, for right now, that would be me. And Chromia is like, okay, I could work with that. I have a plan to get your friend back here. And so, as they're discussing, we would actually see the other members of her team actually interacting with Team Prime. Lycanoid with Bulkhead, hashtag with RC, and even Bumblebee. And this is where eventually Chromia calls all their attention, stating that she has a plan to get their leader back. And that's where I'm going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe, and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you guys have a blessed day. Peace.